Thank you. Both Chuck and I are ushers, which gives our ushers that we're left, we thank them. Anyway, this is my religious journey. I grew up with a Presbyterian mother and a Jewish father, but he was Jewish only in a tradition rather than a religious way. He never discussed religion with me, and through high school, I went to Sunday school at my mother's Presbyterian church. We studied both the Old and New Testament stories, and I took it all in without judgment. Wanting me to have a good education, Florida was pretty dismal back in the 30s, I was sent to a nearby Catholic convent, the Academy of Holy Names. It was a girls' school, but they allowed boys through the 4th grade. Unfortunately, their indoctrination had an effect on me, so by the time I was in the 2nd grade, my mother told of the night she called me into the kitchen asking me to dry the dishes that she was washing. I said, "You can't tell me what to do. You're a dirty old Protestant." At the end of that year, I was moved to secular education. When I reached the 9th grade, still searching for a good education, my parents believed that I was capable of going to another Catholic school, Jesuit High in Tampa, where I grew up. There I joined a Catholic youth group called the Sodality. Actually, my motivation was because we were at a boys' school and the Sodality encompassed all the girls' schools in the area. At one of their annual statewide conferences, there was a big discussion about whether a non-Catholic could even be a member of a Catholic organization like the Sodality, and I was outed. The amazing thing was, the reaction was that I was totally accepted. I learned a lot there about the Catholic ritual, but I was not proselytized. And I was to see the Catholic religion from a little more mature point of view. I discovered I knew more Bible stories than my Catholic classmates. Yeah. When I was in college, I decided to explore the Catholic religion, and I started going to Mass. After a month or so, I heard a sermon given by Monsignor at a high Mass in which he excoriated the Protestants, again with the Protestant bashing. I sure gave up on the Catholicism right there, and I thought Jesus would not have liked that sermon. Anyway, I did start going to some Protestant churches, some I'd never heard of, the Calvinists, for example, and the Lutherans. I'd never been exposed to those. But anyway, I started wondering why so many versions of the Christian religion. And I pretty much gave up going to church. As my engineering education progressed, I learned about the dynamics of our universe and its origin. I began thinking about the existence of God. And I came to the conclusion that you can neither prove nor disprove the existence of God. So I pretty much became an agnostic. I felt that if I were a good person, it didn't matter if there were God or not. I didn't have to worry about it. And as for religion, I concluded that one has to be aware and discern what is true and what is concocted. For the first year of my marriage to my first wife, Garnet, we didn't go to church except for the wedding. Prior to our marriage, I had told her my beliefs, and she had accepted them. However, she was brought up by an extremely religious parents, and once we had a child, she wanted to raise him in a church environment. She was a Methodist, so we interviewed a minister, and I told him I believed the moral code that Jesus taught, but not the miracles. He said that was fine, and we joined. Through the years, Garnet, my first wife, and including the first year of my life with Anne, we always joined a church wherever we lived. However, I generally disliked the sermons. The good ones would start with some local current event and evolve that into a story, but they almost always ended up with, all you need to do is believe on Jesus, you're saved. And to me, that didn't cut it. Also, Garnet's memorial service was horrible. Her name was just mentioned about once, and all the time spent about talking about being saved and going to heaven. So much focus on the hereafter, and so little attention to the beautiful life she had lived. Anne was also raised in the Methodist faith, and I met her when our families attended the same church. We can't say exactly when we met. Garnet, Ann, and I were always active in the various churches that we attended. We were not pew sitters. I have a newspaper clipping with both of them in the same picture of Garnet and Ann advertising our church bazaar. About a year after Ann and I married, I was transferred and we moved 30 miles away. We found a Methodist church near our home and started going there, but things did not turn out well. After a visit from the minister, the associate minister, and a call from the Ways and Means Committee, we realized that they were mainly interested in our money, and also we had to contend with 5 youngsters who didn't integrate well there either. We lived in California near Stanford University, and we learned of a group called the Creative Initiative Foundation. It was started by a couple of retired Stanford professors, a man and his wife, and their motto was "Save the Earth." We thought it was an ecology group, but it turned out there was more of a religious bent in there as well. But their thesis was, if you want to convert people to do the right thing, then you have to make sure that you yourself are doing the right thing. So we did a lot of personal work with them. We examined our child herds. We learned about hidden admonitions. Those are things that your parents teach you, they didn't know they're teaching you, and you didn't know you were learning. But many of your behaviors are automatically reacting to those learnings. We learned how to identify them and decide for ourselves how we wanted to really react to them for the better. We became more watchful of the consequences of our actions. During this period, we started our annual Festival Light celebration, which our kids loved. And with this group, we succeeded in getting a non-nuclear initiative on the California ballot. We also studied with them a book called The Teachings of Jesus, which emphasized Jesus' true word. One of our sons had gotten married in a Unitarian church in California. So when we moved to Florida, we found a local Unitarian fellowship on Madeira Beach near our condo, and we decided to attend. So we got all dressed up in our Sunday attire, and when we arrived, we found everyone in costume with a lot of styrofoam tombstones with slogans on them. It was Halloween weekend. In that fellowship, that began our first part of our UU journey in 1993. In that fellowship, we took turns developing our own services and discussion prior to the service. It was quite invigorating to do that. Anyway, our path went finally to here, UUC, in 2006. Ann and I have taken many responsibilities here at UUC. I've spoken the regular service from the pulpit. I've served on many committees. I've chaired some. I supported Ann when she organized the covenant groups, and we together developed the programs for those groups. I've maintained a congregational membership list. I've worked the auctions. I'm on the endowment board, the Endowment Foundation board. This is the second time on my board of trustees here. I've marched with my rainbow suspenders in gay pride's parades. I've marched with the farm workers as they supported them in their quest for good working conditions. On my religious journey, I've left a few footprints here at UUC, some small, some large. I suggested dropping stones in the water instead of using candles for joys and sorrows. I suggested to Patrice to use slideshows to support her service, and I created a lot of the original ones when I worked the sound booth. And I brought to the congregation Peter Goldhammer's affordable concept of Surtee Hall and paid for the initial architectural plans that evolved into the building that we have today. So when I look back on my religious journey, I think it translates into one word: service. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, including those that are here and on Zoom. Of course, the talk is about our personal journey that led us here to this place and to this faith, I tried to come up with an idea that would make my journey interesting, because we all have journeys. We all have our personal journeys that led us here. So I've come up with an idea that I'm dividing my journey into a series of pivotal events that led me here, and my wife, Jeannie. So the first pivotal event was my birth in Michigan on 12/26/1940, and that was very pivotal for me. We grew up in a small town in western Michigan, mainly all Protestants. At age 8, I got very ill. I was kind of delirious with fever, a stiff neck, and I had paralysis on my right side of my body. And my mother took me to the family doctor, who said, "Your son's got polio. Let's get him to the hospital in Battle Creek, Michigan." And I ended up in a 20-bed ward of kids. Most of them were dying of polio, and that was a very panicky time for the whole country. The doctors at that time, it had no real treatment. Penicillin was brand new. Everybody was getting penicillin shots. Today we know that penicillin doesn't help. But I finally recovered after rehab and getting out of the hospital. My paralysis totally resolved. In retrospect, what I know now, despite my family said this is a miracle from God that you survived and that you were not left with paralysis. I know now that I probably had spinal meningitis, and that's why the penicillin really helped me. So that was not a pivotal event that led me here, but it led me to think about what really happened. At age 14, it was clear that my father, who suffered from rheumatic heart disease, was getting worse. And the doctors told him that it would be better if he moved to Florida, a warm climate. So we sold everything we had in Michigan and bought a 36-foot mobile home trailer, and we pulled it with our little 52 Chevy down to Florida, and we were headed into Highway 19 in St. Petersburg. And we saw a mobile home park. We pulled in. They said, "We don't take dogs." And so we said, "All right, where is there a place?" Well, New Ranch Trailer Park in Clearwater. So we turned around, and that's how we ended up in Clearwater, our dog. So that was a pivotal event that brought us to Clearwater. So we're closer to this place. Unfortunately, after about a year here, our father got much worse, and it was clear that he was dying quite soon without the possibility of an experimental heart surgery to replace his aortic valve. And that was another pivotal event. So those boys moved back to Michigan, but my smallest brother, who you probably know as Max Shimer, who's a member here, was 6 years old. And in Bethesda, Maryland, he underwent experimental surgery, but unfortunately it didn't work, and he died. And so here our whole family's in Michigan, but we had just moved to Clearwater. So our family got together and my mother said, this vote, are we going to stay in Clearwater or are we going to move back to Michigan? And we voted to stay. So I went to Clearwater Junior High and high school. I played football. I got hurt, my back. I got clobbered. And another pivotal event occurred. My mother took me to a local chiropractor and treated my back. And the chiropractor said, son, have you ever thought about a career as a chiropractor? And I said, no. Well, you ought to think about it. So he convinced my family. My mother had remarried, and they were convinced to pay the tuition for me to go to chiropractic college. And that was in Indianapolis, the Lincoln Chiropractic College. And that's where I met my wife, Jeannie. And another pivotal event that eventually led us here. After 4.5 years at the chiropractic college, we moved back here to Florida and set up practice. Jeannie started working at GTE. And so for 7 years, I built my practice in Clearwater. I had some concerns, and I felt that I wanted to do more than just treat back and neck problems. And I was accepted at Duke University's physician's assistant program. It's a master's program. So moved our family up to Durham, North Carolina. So that's farther away from Clearwater. But after finishing that program, we moved back to our home in Clearwater. And we were doing fine. Jeannie was moving up in her career. She was on the Speakers Bureau for GTE, and she was assigned to come and speak to a singles club, a group that was here at UC at that time, and that was in 1982. And she came and spoke to the group, and she was very impressed with everybody that was here. They were engaged, they were smart, they asked good questions. She said, these people are super. And so she picked up some brochures here at UC, brought them home, and I read through them, and I was reading about the 7 principles. And I thought, wow, those 7 principles, they really spoke to me because we were practicing Catholics and we were kind of disillusioned about the dogma involved. And so we came to our first service, and we were very impressed with everybody, and we continued our membership, and that's one of the pivotal events that we became official members. I served on the Board of Trustees. We were active in various ways here at the church. Come retirement time, we decided that we would move to our vacation home up in North Carolina, in Asheville. And at that area, we joined a Unitarian congregation in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And but unfortunately, I developed some chest pain and ended up in having quadruple bypass surgery. And we were pretty isolated up on the mountain, even though it was a beautiful place. And we moved back. So that was another pivotal event that brought us again back here. Now, my journey has not ended. My journey continues. as everybody's, and in fact, our whole congregation continues our journey. But this current journey that I'm in right now, not to who knows how long that's going to end. But my next journey may begin after that, who knows? And that's why we say we bow to the mystery. Thank you for your indulgence.